I'm a huge proponent of adopting identities and stepping into identities that will serve you in your life. However, this life is not all or nothing. This life cannot be lived in absolutes. And that's why what can serve you today can become a trap for you tomorrow. And it is something that we need to talk about. Like, we have to talk about it. Hey, listener, welcome to episode number 98 of Listen Up. So, today we are going to be talking about a very important topic, the topic of mastering an identity. Now, if you've been here a while, then you may already know that every month I choose a theme. I name a theme as a way of living with intention. And that theme helps establish direction for my intentions for the year. And I love to bring you along in the journey and grow with you and evolve with you as we master all these different concepts. If you are brand new here, welcome. Welcome. Today is hopefully the exact message that you needed to hear. And that's why you were brought to this episode for the very first time. So the theme that I chose for March is Mastery March. And the reason for that is because my personal word of the year is excellence. And one of the things that I wanted to focus on this month was the idea of adopting a mastery mindset in all of the things that I do in my life. How do you adopt mastery? How do you become a master at your craft, at creating the life that you want to create, at achieving goals? How do you do it? That's what I want to be nurturing this month. That's what I want to learn about this month. That's where I want my focus to go this month. So, in exploring these concepts, I came across the tool of identity work. And I am a huge believer in identity work. I think it's a game changer to create the identity of the outcome you are trying to achieve in your life. So, for example, if you want to run a marathon, it is a way more powerful process to identify as a runner than to think about running a marathon every day, right? Once you start to identify yourself as a runner, it pushes you into a new direction. You start to adopt runners' habits. You start to eat like a runner. You start to think like a runner. You start to push yourself like a runner, and you train for that marathon like a runner. Holding on to that identity is a total game changer. Same thing goes with if you want to write a book. There's Writing a book is a hard process, but when you identify as a writer, I am a writer, I am an author, and you start to adopt habits that writers adopt and a lifestyle that a writer has, and you when you sit to write in front of your computer, you come in as a writer with the identity of a writer. It changes the way that you approach the book. When you approach writing a book as like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not a writer, I just want to write this thing, it limits you. It's not as nurturing of an experience as it is when you can nurture an actual identity and hold on to that identity. So I'm a huge proponent of adopting identities and stepping into identities that will serve you in your life. However, this life is not all or nothing. This life cannot be lived in absolutes. And that's why what can serve you today can become a trap for you tomorrow. And it is something that we need to talk about. Like, we have to talk about it. So, the question that I have for you today is, what happens when an identity that has helped you grow is the same identity that starts to hold you back? Has the identity become a trap? That's the big question. So I thought it was best to illustrate this point with a story. So if you have followed my work, you may already know I've talked a lot about one of my sons who is an actor. And my son found a passion for acting at 7 years old. And from the time that he found it, he really started to work to assume the identity of an actor. And he has spent the last 10 years doing that work and stepping into that identity. So he's had a lot of success in his life. He's made a lot of choices. He's made a lot of sacrifices. He has gone all in this craft of his, and he's actually quite talented and very good at what he does. And a couple of years ago, as he was entering high school, when he was in the ninth grade, he started to feel imprisoned by the life that he had created. You see, in the process of identifying as an actor, my son became labeled a theater kid. Now, there's nothing wrong with being labeled a theater kid, and he certainly didn't have any problems with it. But at some point, that was all that he was. He was just a theater kid, and he was identified as a theater kid, and his life revolved around theater, and his schooling revolved around theater, and everything was pigeonholed through the lens of theater. And for a long time, I had always said to him, "You are not an actor. You are a person who loves to act, and you don't have to be an actor forever," because I know about the identity trap. I know that we sometimes become limited by our labels, but he was on board with being a theater kid. He was on board with being an actor, and he wanted to identify as an actor because it served the goals that he was trying to achieve at that time. And we didn't realize when that had become a trap because he didn't know how to articulate that, how to let us know that this identity was no longer serving him, until one day that I asked him what I consider to be a brilliant question, because it was I thought it was a rhetorical question, and it was a question that unlocked his entire future. And the question was, "But you're happy at your school, right?" That was the simple question. I just asked him if he was happy where he was at. And for the first time, he had the opportunity to let me in on the little secret he had been keeping for about a year, that he was not happy where he was anymore. Not because he didn't love theater, not because he didn't love the school, not because he didn't love the kids, but because the identity that he had stepped into had become a self-imposed prison. It was no longer a tool. It was a trap. And he wanted more. He wanted to expand. He wanted to try different things. He wanted to explore different identities, and he didn't know how. He thought, "I have to fulfill this path because this is the path I have chosen." What also makes this a little difficult is that he really did want to become an actor when he was an adult. So he's always thought he wants to have this as a profession when he's older. So I think a part of him felt like if he walked away from that, would he be sabotaging his future as an adult, right? So there was like, "Oh, I want to have a different high school experience. I want to have some fun. I want to try new things, but am I going to sabotage myself in the future?" These are fears that we all live with, right? I have to stay on the right path. I have to be consistent. I have to do, I can't take my eye off the prize. I can't get off, I can't get on a detour. Like we all struggle with this because we all make the mistake of thinking that life is a straight linear path, and it's not. And even when we want to stay on a straight linear path, life itself gives us detours, right? Like it takes us on a ride and on a journey, even when we want to be on a straight path. But imagine when we don't want to be on a straight path, the we think we have to be in order to be successful, and that's just not the case. So when my son told us about this feeling that he was having, I actually did a whole episode about this, episode number 17, which is called Getting Off the Bus. And I have to tell you, it is one of my most popular episodes because so many people have reached out to me and said, I can identify with that analogy. I know what it's like to feel like I'm on the wrong bus. And sometimes I haven't had the courage to get off the bus. But at that time, we looked at our kid and we said, no, 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 this is, you're not going to be trapped by this identity. Just because you made a decision at 7 years old does not mean that you have to be a theater kid for the rest of your life. We're going to give you other opportunities. So he did something really brave and courageous. He left his theater program, which was an incredibly prestigious and awesome program. He left that program and he joined another school. And in that school, he spent about a year exploring and expanding his identity. He created a new social life. He joined the football team. He took different electives. He still took theater because he loves theater, but it wasn't his only identity. He stopped defining himself as the theater kid. In fact, most kids at the school that he went to school with, the people that were on his team and his new friends, nobody really knew that he had any acting ability at all. They didn't even know that he, was an actor. It wasn't, he did not make it a thing because he wanted to experiment with different identities. He wanted to expand his identity. And what he discovered was something powerful, which is he loves acting, he loves theater, but he is not an actor or a theater kid. He is a human being with so many layers, so many possibilities, so many expressions that he can have for himself. And he gets to choose which one he steps into and at what time. And none of them have to define him fully. That was a huge lesson for him. Hey, so I'm going to interrupt this episode for just a second to ask you this question. Are you the woman who is consuming growth content but not fully integrating it into your life? If you are craving deeper clarity, more follow through, and real emotional joy and connection in your life, not because everything is perfect, but because you are living in alignment, then the well was built for you. This is a structured, calm, and safe environment where you strengthen your decision making, your standards, and your direction, and stop self negotiating, stop living on autopilot, and stop drifting with indecision. If this is exactly what you're looking for, then the details are in the show notes. I would love to see you inside. Now, back to the episode. So, that leads me back to you. When you are trying to change your lifestyle, stepping into an identity can be extremely powerful. Instead of saying, well, I'm trying to eat healthy and exercise, there is something very powerful about saying, I am healthy. Instead of saying, oh, I'm just trying to start a business, there's something powerful about saying, I am an entrepreneur. Identity helps you anchor behavior. Identity helps your brain understand who you are becoming. It is an incredible gift to focus on identity work. And in addition to helping us grow, naming ourselves often helps us understand ourselves better. It helps our brain understand why we do certain things, or the category that we fit under, so that we can work around it. An example of that is if you have been struggling to focus in your life, and you have certain patterns in your personality and in your behavior, and then all of a sudden you discover that you have ADHD, it could help you feel understood. Like, oh, there's a name for this kind of personality. There's a name for being a person who doesn't focus that well. Once you understand that, it makes you feel a little bit more normal. It helps you understand that you do belong. You just identify with a different group of people that share this characteristics, and you can work around that identity. And again, if you use it properly, that identity can become an incredible tool to support your growth, to channel you, give you intention and direction, and let you nurture the parts of yourself that are going to optimize yourself. So there's nothing wrong with identities and names, but those identities can become labels, which can become limiting. So rather than saying, oh, I experience ADHD symptoms and therefore I find awesome ways to support my growth, you can easily turn that into limiting self-expression. No, I don't function well because I'm ADHD. No, I don't focus well because I'm ADHD. Oh no, I can't do that because I'm this. Once we start to use our identity in absolutes, I always, I never, I cannot, I will not, I am not, we start to limit ourselves, and labeling becomes a limiting trap. And now we start to fit into that box. Now we start to work inside of that cage, and we forget that we are designed for evolution and that we have the ability to reinvent ourselves, and we have the ability to re-identify with new identities that will serve where we are going better than what the identities that we've had up until now are serving us. You see, our bodies are trained to change. And you know this because you're not a baby anymore. A physical evolution of your body. I read somewhere that in every 7 years, you have literally replaced every cell in your body. You are a physically completely different human body than you were 7 years ago. We are designed to shed our bodies and have new ones, create new ones. But mentally and emotionally, we can get trapped into the belief that we are not designed for reinvention or for evolution. We can get into a fixed mindset that this is who we are and this is why, and nothing will ever change. And now we are trapped in this. And I find that to be terrifying, but I also find it to be fascinating that identities that we longed for at some point can become traps. So imagine, you've been a lawyer your whole life and you think, why? I can't become a life coach. I'm a lawyer. That's what I do. I'm an actor. I can't go play football. That's what I do. I have to be a theater kid. Pick your poison. There's a million examples out there. Even the positive ones can feel stifling at some point in your life if your mind and your soul and your body is ready for something new. That's why I love to see people who are brave enough and courageous enough to reinvent themselves at some point. So what if you've done this your whole life? What if you wanted to try something new? Try it. Look like a beginner. Be an amateur. Be curious. Approach it with childlike wonder and release the identities that no longer serve you. That's what daring is all about. Daring is about having a desire in your heart and taking aligned action and releasing what does not serve you so that you may find a new expression for yourself. My son did that. And what's fascinating is that he did find his way back to theater. He's not the same person in theater today that he was when he left his program 2 years ago. Last weekend, he actually played Uznavi in the Heights at his school play. And it was a role that he had dreamt of since he was 9 years old. Always wanted to be Uznavi. And what's crazy is that had he not left his school to come to this school so that he could disassociate with theater a bit, he would not have had the opportunity to play Uznavi in the Heights play that he did this year. And it was the role of his lifetime. He absolutely crushed it. So that detour was exactly what he needed for him to express himself more fully. You see, you are a soul experiencing human life. Your soul is not limited to one identity. Your soul is exploring, it's trying, it's expanding, it's learning. Identities are simply roles we play for seasons. So, whatever identity you have played in this life so far, you can take a detour. You can try something new. You can go in a different direction. Even if you find yourself coming back to an identity that you had once before, the skills you learned on the path will train you for something bigger. They will prepare you to be even a fuller expression of the identity that you broke away from. But they are not who you are. They are roles you play. At the end, you're just a soul enjoying this life. That's it. And that doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a label. It doesn't have limits. It doesn't have traps. It is magnificent, endless, and capable of all sorts of things beyond your wildest imagination. So today I ask you, where have you placed a label on yourself? Where might that label be limiting you? Are you naming identities to nurture a higher purpose or a better version of yourself? Or are you using labels to limit your potential and limit your self-expression and limit your possibilities? And then I ask you to think about if you could step into any identity of your desires, what would it be? And what is one small step that you can take to start nurturing that identity? Knowing that identities don't have to be permanent. They are simply tools for becoming. So I'll end with this. Mastery isn't about perfecting one identity. It's about remembering that you are allowed to evolve. You are not a label. You are a soul living a human experience. And life is your invitation to explore all that you can become. So this month, I invite you to loosen your grip on labels and stay curious about the person you are becoming. And always use identities as a tool and never as a trap. I hope this episode has served you and given you something to think about, and I will see you next week. That's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for being here. I am deeply, deeply grateful to connect. If you're loving this podcast, I'd love if you'd follow, rate, or leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Those reviews help us so, so much. And if you know of someone who could really use a voice like mine in their head, please share this episode with them. Now, if you're feeling called to keep the conversation going, come join us inside the Bliss and Up community on Facebook. It is a free space to reflect and root into intention together. You can find the link in the show notes or just search Bliss and Up with Caroline de Posada on Facebook. I'd love to welcome you in. Until next time, take care and keep noticing the sparks of bliss in your life.